Okay, good night, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here once again to talk on practical, tactical country living. Tonight, the topic is Earth Matters series. So let us bow our heads for prayer. Thank you. Father Almighty, we want to thank you for this opportunity to come before you once again. We want to thank you for the opportunity to share what you have taught me with your people. And as I present tonight, I ask you to, the words that I speak may be from you. May you take control, be with the technology. May you be with my thoughts, and Lord, you know I don't know all about these matters I'm going to present tonight. May you enlighten us and continue to enlighten would be delivered tonight. It's my prayer, thanksgiving. Amen. Okay, tonight we continue with practical, tactical country living. Last week we talked, yes, about the alternative building material, and we focus on using soil to make blocks. Tonight we're going to continue focusing on well, the soil again and why the earth matters. So let's continue with the next slide immediately. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start in the beginning with creation. And in the beginning, we know God created the heaven and the earth. And we skip all the way down to day 3, where, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together in one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. And God called it dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas, and God saw it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seeds is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and the herb, yielding seed after his kind, and a tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw it was good. And the evening and the morning was the 3rd day. Now we see here in verse 1, God created the heaven and then he created the earth. So he, of course, created light on the 1st day, and then he dealt with the firmament, which is considered the heaven, separate the waters above from the waters below. And then he took the waters, separated the waters from the earth. But one thing God did that was very, very significant, he immediately planted the earth. He put the trees in place immediately. He didn't choose to say, make the fishes or the fowl of the air, which he did on the 4, on the 5. He did immediately planted the trees and the grass and covered the earth. This is significant, and we will see later on how this parallel may play off down later on in the presentation. And we jump straight into Genesis chapter 2, and God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. And that was one of the first, or the second, one of our first major jobs we had, to take care of the garden and dress it, which is technically almost agriculture. So that was one of the first jobs we had. And now, where, of course, we're going back to country living, is one of the jobs we may have to take back up again, because we know in the future it will be a problem for us for buying and selling. So we must be able to take back up this this occupation soon enough in the future. But to be prepared to do this, this is what this presentation, or to help us to be better prepared for this, is what this presentation is all about. So the earth. So the earth can be placed into 4 major subsystems. We have land, we have water, living things, or air. These 4 subsystems are called spheres, right? because we know we call the whole global system the earth, which include the seas, everything that dwell on the earth. And the four systems are, as I mentioned, and they are specifically, they are the lithosphere, which is the land, the hydrosphere, which is water, biosphere, the living things, and the atmosphere being the air. Each of these four spheres can be divided into subspheres, but we, of course, this is just to let us know, of course, you know, the biosphere could be divided into the sea creatures, the flying creatures, the terrestrial animals, and even broke down even further than that. But this is just for our knowledge. We will be focusing on the lithosphere or the land in this presentation, which is most important to us. And as a result of the focus on the land, it has a major effect on the biosphere, on the hydrosphere, and even on the atmosphere. And we will see how it relates as we continue. So where did the name Earth came from? All right, let's check that out. Earth is English, the international language of astronomy. So it derives from an Old English or Germanic words for ground and earth, right? So the word earth simply means ground. And in various different studies, they use different languages are considered the international language. Of course, for astronomy, they use English. And as a result, we have an English word for our home planet called the Earth. Now, Earth is the only planet that is named, have an English name. All the others have, I think, is Greek and one other language the names are named after, and they're all named after gods. But we are fortunate that our Earth, our home planet, is called simply Earth, which means ground. So Earth, the meaning is, or this meaning of course, it has several meanings of the word earth, but the one we're going to focus on is the fragmental material composing part of the surface of the globe, especially the cultivatable soil, which is what we're going to zero in on in this presentation. And so, of course, why this is so important and why does the earth really matters to us? Why should it matter to us? So you see here that soil is a mixture of organic matter, minerals, gases, liquids, and organisms that together support life. So of course, without soil, less life, or life technically cannot be supported. Of course, so this soil, or this area of the surface of the earth, is called the pedosphere, and this is probably another subsector that the lithosphere is broken down into, and it has four important functions. One, as a medium for plant growth, as a means of water storage, supply, and purification, as a modifier of the Earth's atmosphere, which have to do with the air. And you see how it relates in here now with the other spheres, just the Earth we're talking about here, and also as a habitat for organisms. So when we think the Earth is just pure dirt, the Earth is a whole, or the soil or earth, as we're referring to here, this is a whole ecosystem by itself. And without it, plant growth would suffer. Water storage, supply, and purification will be an issue. the Earth atmosphere can be affected. And of course, it wouldn't have any habitat for the organisms that really contribute to this section, contributes to our life. Because of course, if we don't have plants, we won't have a lot of food, we won't have a good atmosphere, storage of water, and we'll see how it all play out later on as we continue through this presentation. So why Earth matters? Again, we talked on it a little bit just now there. It affects all aspects of our lives are impacted by the Earth. So of course, it will impact our social, our mental, even our spiritual, our financial, you name it. It will affect and it will impact every aspect of our lives. So this is just an example. The flash floods and landslide as a result of all the rainfall last week. And we know that is a direct result of not being good managers of the land or the earth entrusted to us as a nation. Yes, we had a phenomenal amount of rainfall, but if things were managed better, it would not have gone to that critical state, all right? So that is one real negative impact. Of course, we had landslides. Even where I live in, up Lopino Road, we had landslides even before where I live a couple of weeks ago as a result of course, not some of the best practices done by us humans, you know? So that is one negative impact. But of course, there are some positives. And another example, the answer lies in the soil. And this is now I can't even remember what the abbreviation of the book is, but the whole chapter of this book written by Ellen G. White, the answer lies in the soil. And this talks about the parable of the sower. We know, of course, some fell by the wayside. What happened to it? I'm just going to touch on the surface. Of course, some fell among thorns, some fell among rocks, but that which fell in good ground, that grew up, and of course, it produced hundredfold of fruits. So of course, we see where we can even learn spiritual lessons from the earth. The garden of the heart needs cultivating, and this is from the tilling of the soil. Lessons may be constantly be learned, and this is child guidance, page 57. Paragraph. We can learn a lot of lessons, spiritual lessons, or activity, or doing things with the soil. This is another reference that was made here. And lastly, a healthy plant grown on soil properly balanced can and will resist most insects, characterize, make it a better food product. And this is by Dr. Charles Nodden. That was a Senate document, number 264. So we see here why Earth matters. To get a healthy plant, we must have a properly balanced soil. And we see we can have, of course, spiritual lessons. Of course, we can have the negative impact also that we have experienced here in Trinidad and other parts of the world too, not only Trinidad. So as a result, so that is why, some of the reasons why the earth really matters. So what are earth matters? Some of the issues. One is just simply degradation of the soil. Degradation of the soil is like almost like, and of course, as a result of doing this, there were a lot of other spiritual lessons I learned by just preparing this. It's like degradation of my soul because of sin and all the ill effects. So this is some of the issues or some of the effects of degradation of the soil we're gonna talk about. Of course, degradation is a process by which something is made worse. And they talk about, they use the quality of the land. So if we have degradation of the soil, quality of the land go down. And of course, the other impacts, some of what I mentioned earlier on, will be a direct result, all right? The processes, in most cases, by and large, are human-induced. It's because of us, it's because of man, we have these issues, a whole lot of these issues, degradation of the soil. In many cases of natural disasters, such as landslides, floods, bushfires, indirectly involved. So we see here
as a result of all these effects of the degradation of the soil, or the and directly involved. I um, I remember even so, and this presentation was kind of timely because I remembered and mentioned it to Brother Showin that even last week Wednesday, when I looked up the news after the rains we had, on the news it was reported about people indiscriminate building and all those kind of stuff contributing to these landslides, flash floodings, and all this kind of and all these ill effects that we experienced last week and continue to experience when rainfall. And that is very true. And this time, so we can learn more about how we can mitigate some of these problems when we go out there to build. As a result, we will not be, of course, we will be in doing things fun. All right. So let us continue. 36 types of land degradation that can be assessed. All are induced or aggravated by human activities. Seems like almost all the issues with the degradation of the soil have to do with us, humans. Some examples. We have soil erosion, of course, by when rain falls. If you look at the rivers, the water is almost always totally brown. That is erosion, that's major erosions are taking place on soil that has been washed away. As a result, you have soil contamination by disposing of waste. Some of them might be not biodegradable, some of them might be chemical waste. Even all the fertilizer that is being used in the soil is some of the things that are contributing to contamination. You have soil acidification, and that is that is also another problem by the uses of chemicals and stuff in the soil. Sheet erosion, when large masses of land is exposed, we have sheet erosion. Silting, that is the rivers and the streams are being filled up with soil and contributing to the flooding and all that kind of stuff. Silting. We have air aridification, that is where places where we don't really have that as a major issue here in Trinidad, because that's like when things turn into like a desert. And oh, sorry, that one is a tongue twister for me. But that is when, of course, the land get waterlogged and leaching. You have the salts coming up from underground and settling on top and drying off, and you finally get this white kind of finish on the top of the soil. Fortunately, I don't think we have very much of that here also, but we do have urbanization occurring at a rapid pace here in Trinidad. So these are just some of the degradations we examples. Of course, urbanization, what you find happening is that when the rainfall, you have less place for the water to run off and percolate into the soil. So it just runs off into the drain and all of that, and contribute to flash flooding and that kind of thing, and major erosion as a result. So some of the consequences of degradation. Reduced productivity. And when we're talking about productivity, we're talking about when we plant our crops, so crops are planted, you find it don't produce as much as it used to. It may be in size, it may be, and this reduced productivity also we can add also the quality of the product also. So how nourishing it is also. So this is one of the major things in agriculture that is impacted. Reduced biomass, meaning that of course you get less product. You get if you get less product, of course you would it will contribute to less animals, of course, having food to eat, so they may not grow as big. Trees may not grow as big as they used to, all that is impacted because of the degradation of the soil. Of course, once you have a reduced biomass, you can have a reduce in biodiversity in plants, in animals, and all these things, of course, work together to enhance the environment on Earth and will impact the other spheres as a result, right? Reduced soil nutrition. Of course, once you have a lot of runoff, you lose the topsoil, you lose the nutrition of the soil. So as a result, you have to use a lot more chemicals to try to get your plants to grow. Of course, that is not the quality of the product will not be the best for food, but that is what they are making available as a result. So you lost soil nutrients, sorry. Reduced vegetative cover. This too will impact in the sense that you find you have less trees as a result. You have what they call, as a result, a lot more impact erosion when the rain fall. So you find the effects of the degradation just technically snowball as a result when things start going downhill. And you find you constantly, of course, have problems with the vegetative cover or even getting vegetation to grow as a result. And what we have been doing here, what has been done here in Trinidad, you have a lot of, and probably other parts of the world, you have a lot of tree planting exercise and forest reforestation projects and all that kind of stuff in various community to plant back trees because they won't grow back so easily on their own, or at least the trees that will really originally they won't grow back as easy as they would. So of course, this is another thing that can continually impact on the degradation of the soil, right? Degradation, the causes. So let's see what some of the causes are as a result of degradation. Land clearance. And what we're talking about here is not that, not just taking a bulldozer for some development and clearing out a whole portion of land, but it actually talks about clear cutting and deforestation. Clear cutting, where I live here in Lopino, to the north of me, there's a valley, and on the hill on the other side, I would see every year that we keep clearing more and more and more of the hill for planting. And usually that deforestation and clear cutting contributes to, of course, downstream. It may not affect us here directly, immediately, as far as flooding and flash flooding, but it creates problem down the road for others. In addition, the possibility of landslide on the hill, which still wouldn't impact me very much, but of course, is the degradation of the land, and it's not the best practice, of course, clear cutting and deforestation of the forest or any forested area or played area with a lot of trees. Depletion of the soil nutrients. And what causes that? Poor agriculture and farming practices. Of course, if you continue to plant and you don't put back any nutrients in the soil, of course, eventually the soil will lack nutrients, and that's why we always have to put back organic stuff into the soil. And that's why farmers too also usually have to put, of course, they substitute chemicals to put back nutrients, as they call it, back into the soil. And of course, continually planting on the land will continually deplete the nutrients. Of course, we know the model where we're supposed to plant for 6 years and then you parcel of land and let it rest a Sabbath for 1 year. And those are things that not really are practiced in the farming industry locally. So that is one of the things that contribute to depletion of the soil. Of course, spraying the chemicals and stuff too add even more fuel to the fire to deplete the nutrition in the soil. Inappropriate irrigation. And what again, this is for agricultural practices. Of course, if we irrigate too much, soil, of course, could leach out a lot of the nutrients that is left there, and you can lose it as a result. You can make the soil too waterlogged. In addition, if irrigation is not really managed properly, and you could have, of course, you running off of the nutrients as a result through leaching of the nutrients into the water and down the drain. Urban sprawl, and we kind of touch on urbanization, of course. Home and in home, well, urban sprawl and squatting is home and inappropriate development. And those are some of the things that, like in your home, a lot of people, when they build their homes now, they almost cast in the whole yard and tile in the yard. And yeah, it looks pretty and it's easy to clean and all that kind of stuff. But of course, when you do that, you have, like I mentioned earlier on, no place for the water when the rain falls to percolate into the soil, and it just adds, of course, all this water now have to run out into the drain and contribute to flash flooding. According to law for your home, I think your land could only be, I think it's 60% of your property could be covered by your house or any concrete development. 40%, and I stand to be corrected with that, 40% must be left open soil, a lawn or some kind of thing, so that the rain could fall and percolate into the soil. And they did this to try and mitigate the chances of course, contribute to soil degradation, of course, through flash flooding and all that kind of stuff. Of course, people don't do that. They cast their whole yard in some cases because they don't want to cut any grass and they don't want any mud and to make things easier. Again, you have inappropriate development such as squatting. And this is something we have on Lopino Road, the lower part of development. Nothing wrong with doing, want somewhere to live, but if you're doing it, it must be done properly. And that is something that seems to go together with squatting, that inappropriate development and contributes to problems that the government have to fix or in the long run. And the people that might be doing the right thing or going through the right channels also have to suffer as a result. In addition to this, I must say too, a lot of the things we will be doing properly so that we wouldn't contribute or additionally contribute to such problems as a result of squatting when we develop our country homes for country living. Another thing, degradation via vehicle off-roading. And this is as a result of the disregard of the use of best practices. You know, when we go in country living, there are places where we may have to go that we may have to use four-wheel drive off-road vehicles. Of course, you have to use your discretion. These vehicles cause a lot of damage to the roads and contributes to a lot of erosion and even accessibility. So, and lately it's a big thing in Trinidad where these guys go around just for the fun of it, accessing a lot of, some of them is actually farming roads. I visited several places like Braseco to Madamas, the Madamas Road, and they will go to Madamas or Double River and they destroy the road and create problems for people in there that live and plant on the land to get their stuff in and out. So we have to be we have this as a problem here in Trinidad. And maybe where you might acquire some land, you have to, of course, hope that it's not one of the routes that these people may consider using and may make it even difficult for you to access in and out. So this is one of the other things that cause thing that is developing here in Trinidad, a big deal right now. Um, of course, we have quarrying, and this is whether it's legal or illegal for stone, sand, or any kind of minerals. Um, Even the legal quarries, they have a mandate when they're finished. They're supposed to replant and even fill back these holes if they're doing when they're using the dredgers to access the material, and they leave these holes that fill up with water, and trees don't grow back, and you name it. When you if you go into Tobago or flying out internationally and the plane pass over and say, you can see how the it looks almost like a battlefield technically. So those are some of the impacts and degradation as a result. Even the rivers they use to wash some of these material are always full of silt and impacted as a result of washing of the material in the using the water to wash the material and then send back the stuff into the rivers. So these are some of the issues and also contribute to degradation of soil. Monoculture. Monoculture meaning the planting of one type of crop, it may be corn for maybe an acre or two. This destabilizes the local ecosystem. Of course, the ecosystem usually have a nice mixture of plants, and as a result, and they grow very well in harmony with each other. If we when you plant monoculture crop, you find it may leach the soil of one particular nutrient more than another, and it don't give back, so it contributes to the depletion of that nutrient in the soil, and again causes degradation. So what used to grow there before, after that crop is finished, or even if you leave the land, it might not grow. It may not recuperate as a result of that missing nutrient or two, and contribute to in the usual cases, what happens is grass grow up, and you have that cycle every year, just grass instead of anything else. So you have other causes of degradation. You have exposed or naked soil. That is probably why I talked about and realized, well, okay, God really covered the earth immediately after the dry land appeared. He planted the trees and the grass immediately. Here we see degradation is caused also by naked soil. So that's why even in the perfect world, God did that immediately. Just imagine in our unperfect world now, exposure of naked soil would, of course, in degradation will exceed as a result of this. Dumping of non-biodegradable trash, plastic bottles, bags, you name it. Of course, you have chemicals too. Is another big issue with degradation. Invasive species, and this is species of plants. It could be even species of animal, but more plants. And we have one here in Trinidad, an invasive species called acacia, and this will take over a whole area within a couple of years. And when these plants grow up, the local plants that don't survive because they don't have any natural defenses or natural predator here, or maybe if it's an animal or an insect or anything to keep it to mitigate it or to control it. So you find this species will thrive more than any other. And that is what the acacia is doing currently right now. You have loss of carbon. That's when you have erosion, of course, you lose a lot of the carbon that would have which is one of the minerals in the soil, and which also contribute to carbon sequestration. We lose a lot of carbon, soil carbon as a result. And of course, climate change, that is one of the things they're saying has is contributing a whole lot to the to it. I put a asterisk there because I didn't want to touch on that very much, because there is nothing that we can make a big dent on as a group. We just have to do our best, all the other things, and I'm sure we can make a difference for our little area that we are managing. So, can anything be done? Can anything? Let's see. Onlyest thing that can be done, whether the place is considered to be well, in a like what we would call a virgin forest, or what we call a secondary forest. Best practices would be in place, and in the case where, of course, it may have some impact, restoration would be the thing to do. So let me just mention one thing before I go on to the next slide. Now, people think forested areas are very, very fertile soil because all of the big trees and all that kind of stuff. But I have seen it here viewing on the mountain, and was taught that it is not fertile soil, because when they cut the hill to plant their crops, usually the first 2 crops or so may come really, really good, and then after that is downhill from there, and then they have to start using chemicals to enhance their production, and continually, and it continues as they continue to go along. Usually what some of them would do is cut the next area and plant there again, and so they keep cutting and cutting and cutting. But the quality of the soil actually depends on the trees that are there. When you lose the trees from the when you remove the trees from the forest, you eventually remove the source of the nutrients of the soil by the leaves that drop on the ground. Of course, the dry leaves and the fact when these branches and stuff fall and rot, it contributes to the nutrition of the soil. So best practices are in place for a lot of these things, and when you remove the trees again, the soil also start to leach out a lot of the nutrients as a result. So so I don't want to get too much ahead of myself, but it is said also by this French scientist that depleted, worn out soils can be restored to a state of optimal fertility without the use of any fertilizer, the NPK that we hear about ever so often, providing the soil is threatened in such a way as to enhance, providing the soil is treated in such a way as to enhance the micro life in it, right? So so yes, the soil can be restored, just like our lives, no matter how bad we are, we can be restored to Christ. And just like us in nature, God has a way that he can use, you don't even need things that man make actually to treat and restore the soil. And he don't need, as a result, we cannot restore ourselves. He has to do it for us. And the same way, we have to use what he has provided to treat the soil and enhance the soil. We don't necessarily have to use what man has created, right? So some of the things I considered to some of the best practices to help with restoration or maintaining a property is to carry out an assessment on the property. It could be a property that you're occupying years now. It could be one that you just get or one that you plan to get. I suggest carry out an assessment on the property. And some of the assessments that you will do, so yeah, make an assessment of the topography. If it's hilly, if it undulating, if it flat, if it low, the topography is very important because that will determine, of course, what method they would use to plant, how you're gonna protect the soil, um, and even so, possibly what kind of crops you might be able to plant. Then you have to check out the soil type. Of course, if it's sandy, if it's clay, if it's rocky, these are things that will impact soil type too. Maybe things like would contribute, like if it's on a hill, if it's sandy, you may have more erosion than others, and you may not be able to leave the land exposed a lot. Soil type too would tell you like some of the things that could help you with soil type is based on some of the vegetation and trees that growing on it. There's also two available, and something that I have bought from Land and Surveys. There is a soil map of the country, and there are soil map sheets where you can acquire. If you choose to go that deep, check out the soil type that you have in your area or where your property is, so you could better be prepared or understand what you're dealing with. Another thing, drainage. If the soil retain water, if it runs off pretty easily, if water is settling anywhere, so of course this is very important. So you know how to plan your development again to reduce any degradation in the future. The trees and the vegetation. Maybe even, okay, like sometimes they'll determine, okay, you may have some trees going close by, you can thin out the forest so that maybe another tree will flourish. The type of vegetation will help you with what kind of, the quality of the soil also. So this too, even some of the trees you might be able to use back on your property or maybe even sell some of them. So assessment is really, really good to help you to prevent from any degradation, or like I say, it will help with best practices. Another thing, if you have any water source on the land, it could be a pond, it could be a river, it could be a spring, it could be and some of these rivers could be dry rivers too, because when rain started falling, they have water running in it. So you have to take note of possible water sources and where it's running and how we could actually plan with that in mind. So some of the other things, signs of wildlife, if you have any wildlife on the property, usually close to water or water source, or when anytime somewhere muddy, when you're walking, you must always, you can look to see if you find any animal tracks. Usually they like to walk human tracks too. So signs of wildlife could be important. That might help you with another with further assessment. If there's any infrastructure, maybe legal or illegal, or legal or just by the way, because some property may have a road right away passing through it. And it might be an old road right away, it might be a current road right away, but you have to take all those things into consideration. If there was a bridge, if it need a bridge, in addition to that, maybe if there's any utilities, worst case scenario, passing through the land or passing even close to the land. So the infrastructure that in and around the property. So those are some of the things. So when you're planning, of course, if you decide to build and you plan on a right of way and the government come and say, well, hey, this is access to X, Y, and Z, and it's, yeah, it'll have to, it could be another problem there, right? So another thing, land slips. I have one properties and see where land slipping and that kind of stuff. Due to a river course, it had a real bad bushfire the year, and some of the trees got burnt, and as a result, when the rain came, the land slipped because now there's no tree or no earth to hold the land, and the land slipped. So you know, okay, well, that is some of the possible causes how you could mitigate these things to prevent the land from slipping in the future, you know. And we have a couple others here too. How to be informed about adjacent property or property in the future, because they may be doing agriculture to the same way, but they might be using chemicals. They're the water source that maybe you may be downstream to their water source, and they may have a lot of runoff in the water. So you have to study about the quality of the water that you have there. You know, that might be coming your way, and if you want to use it for anything in the home, as such, that is one of the things. Of course, depending on what they're doing, if you're down, how you may impact them, you know, that kind of stuff. So whatever you're doing, you have to consider the other, take into consideration the other stakeholders, so it wouldn't create any problems socially or with the development that you have in mind, that kind of thing. So you have to keep those things in mind. In addition, human activity also is another thing, because in the case of wildlife, you find people might want to come and hunt on their land, or it might have a trap through the property as a shortcut or maybe even access to another property and all these kind of things. So, and even so, some of these activity can cause land degradation, depending on how the track is. If it can cause a little drain to form and contribute to erosion. So all these things are things you can make an assessment of. Now there may be others that I may not have listed here that may be very important, but these are just some of the things that I would consider when I'm, you know, if I'm going to develop any property or for country living as such. These are some of the very, very important things to consider. Some of these would go on, you know, like every 6 months or every year. You can continually monitoring to see, okay, if things changing, and some may be a one-time thing, like the quality of the soil that would, or the type of soil that wouldn't change. The infrastructure, technically, that can change. If any water source, well, yes, that can change too. That can be change in the future. Drainage, you can modify that too, and topography wouldn't change unless something really, really drastic happens. So some things will have to be continually assessed. Some things is a one-time assessment and wouldn't change very much after that. So so the other thing to do is to ensure your plan based on findings. Same thing, even if you have to, if your land is if you have any form of degradation, you plan based on findings and go forward. So one of the ways, so let's just look at one example. If you have a water source on the property, let's start with a stream. You may have a stream running through the land, and yeah, is a nice water source. It might be but one of the requirements according to I think it's the Forestry Act, you're supposed to leave a buffer zone between any waterway and any development that you're doing, whether it's agriculture, whether it's a house, road, anything. Supposed to leave at least, I think is, I can't remember the exact distance, but I think it's 20 meters or 15 meters that I can find out. Buffer zone of trees between the waterway and where you start the development from. Of course, this will protect the edge of the waterway from erosion. And of course, if you have any animals accessing the water, it would be a little cover, a form of cover for them. And also will contribute to keeping the water a little cleaner. If you have any major agriculture, will trap some of the runoffs and all that kind of thing, and reduce the silt getting into the river or into the waterway. So that is one of the things, and that is that. So you have to plan with that, things like that in mind, to ensure that you secure the water source and also the edge of the stream, the water course. Another thing, you may want to, you might have some major plan and you may want to reroute the water source. That is not that is usually not a good suggestion. We all know what happened, I think a couple of years ago, in Greenville, and that was one of the contributing factors. I think they rerouted the river, and that is always never a good suggestion. So you don't plan, well, okay, I could do this, I could do that. No, that is a no-no. And let the river run its natural course. Another thing too is this water course might be it can be a pond, because people build ponds on the land for a water source. Is something that I don't really very much subscribe to unless they have a real problem on their land, like it might be a low-lying area and water may be settling there, and you build a pond to help, get the water into one area so it would run off the land into this pond. That is one of the uses I can consider. Yeah, we see it doing a pond for. So it will be a water source, and you just manage it by cleaning it. Another thing that you can do too in such a case, and that kind of kind of overlapping with the topography of your land, because a lot of other things impact. Some of these things come together when you're planning based on multiple findings on the property. So so as a result of that, you may have a stream coming downhill, and it can contribute to erosion, and it could be a good water source. If you're fortunate, it might have a nice close to almost like a nice downhill waterhead coming running through your land. And when rainfall very heavy, it can contribute to erosion. Some of the things you can do to mitigate some of these things, to manage it, you can make what they call check dams along the water course to slow down the flow of the water and trap the eroded earth and then put it back into your soil. So those are some of the things you can plan and do when you're building or when you're developing your property. You have also it might be even a spring. If you have a spring, you're real fortunate, and that shows that you have a good watershed on the land. And places that you find you have good watershed is places where you find a lot of trees, and that would be two of the things that go together to contribute to the water source. Like I said, again, a multiple couple of things, findings will go together to contribute to certain things on the property. Um, Again, with that water source, you want to maintain the trees. If you decide to clear fell all those trees, you find it might eventually a spring might dry up and you might want to know what's happening. Um, I, I am not originally from Aruka, and the stream at the bottom of Lopino Road, I heard long ago it used to have real water running through there, and now if rain don't fall is a trickle, it just seems to be like almost like wastewater running down the drain from the homes. And it's a direct result of the cutting of the forest. I understand Pine Ridge stand to be corrected, used to be pine trees there. And all the development that happened up in the that area, as a result, it contribute to the loss of that watershed. And that's a whole topic by itself, technically. What happens? Remember, I mentioned when you have deforestation and clear felling, you have you have you have impact from the rain on the soil, and you have also some erosion as a result. When you have trees, the trees mitigate these raindrops when it hit the leaves, and it gently falls to the ground. And when it falls to the ground, you have the leaf litter under the trees, which also contribute to the biolife and all of that stuff you find in the soil. When that water gently percolate between the leaves and get into your topsoil, that's where it filters the water and also get down into your water, trickle down and get down into your watershed. And usually when the dry time come around, when your watershed, the watershed is held in what they call an aquifer. These aquifer releases the water later on. And there you have your springs and your rivers, your streams and your rivers. When you have no trees, plenty house and all these kind of things, and you have direct impact, the water don't get chances gently percolate down into the soil. So it runs off really quick and runs straight into the river, straight immediately and straight into the seas, and on its way sometimes cause flash flooding and things. So you don't have such a water source. So that's why it's important, of course. Like I said, multiple things based on the findings can impact the the many aspects of the thing. And I just choose water source as one. And but best practices and findings, this is where I kind of say to be continued, because what I want to do also is go into things like topography, how topography will, what you can do, some of the best practices in using the topography. You have soil types, drainage, trees, vegetation, and go into all these things later on, so that you could plan some of the best ways to use the property that you have to get the most out of it, and even go into further restoration of the soil. So so we will continue, if not next week. Showing on Wade will let you all know, and we'll go into the best practices on how we can really restore soil to the optimum health that we can benefit the most from. Okay, thank you. Yes, so if anybody have any questions with Showing, can unmute.
Okay. Yes, thanks very much, Richard, for that inspiring once again presentation. This recording will be uploaded. So we're about to take the questions and answers in a little while. So let us just pray to close off the session, and then we'll stop the recording and then go to that.
All right.
Father in heaven, we thank you for what we're able to learn tonight about the soil and about your creation and how we can work even in this experience, but even enhance the environment and not erode it, dear Father. Thank you for the clarity and the information there, God. Bless us this night as we pray. We pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.